Hey, badass business owners, welcome to another episode of the Local Small Business Coach Podcast, where each episode we work on getting you to $100,000 in take-home pay. So if you're all ready to boost your profits, increase your sales, improve your processes, and develop stronger teams so you can stop living job to job, then let's dive in. Hey, badass business owners. Welcome back to the Local Small Business Coach Podcast. Today, what I wanted to do is I want to talk about lessons and how when we go through our business, there's a lot of different lessons that we're going to be able to get. And we grow from those lessons and we learn from them. At least that's what we're supposed to do, is to grow from those lessons. And, I'm a very big believer that we go through things in life in general for a reason. There's always something that we're supposed to get out to it. We don't understand it at the moment, but we do later. Or we have these aha moments and it's another lesson that we're supposed to get. Or things that we just go, wow, okay, cool. You just have those moments, and sometimes they're big and very life altering. And sometimes they're little things that we just file away and say, wow, that was kind of an interesting lesson. Well, when I look at my career, obviously I've had some fantastic teachers and some fantastic learnings from different people and from different experiences and stuff like that. And a lot of people will ask me when it comes to, for example, the 5 years that I owned my ice cream shop, my basket, knowing how it ended and the fact that you ended up closing it down and everything else, would you do it again? Now, I can sit there and I can always wish about what could be, what should have been, what I could have done differently. Definitely not having it at the time when the buy it a month before the recession kicks in, kind of stuff. I can sit there and I can always do that. But at the end of the day, what I always try to do is say, okay, everything I go through is for a reason. So what was this experience about? And what were some of the lessons that I got to walk away with that I was able to take with me, not only to my next business I was able to convert into a six-figure business, but more importantly, what were the lessons that I got out that I continually share with you guys? And what were some of those things that are important for all of us to know in our business, regardless if it was mine or yours or somebody else's? So what I want to do is I started thinking about some of the lessons that I walked away with from my 5 years of having that ice cream shop. And I thought I would kind of share them with you and see if any of them resonate with you or if it's just an aha moment for you as well. Now, my first thing I'm going to do is I do want to do a quote. I kind of missed one last week, so I want to kind of do my quote. And this one happens to do this with this topic. It's kind of perfect. Life is a succession of lessons, which must be lived to be understood. And that is so true. And it's by Ralph Waldo Emmerson. Life is a succession of lessons, which must be lived to be able to understood. And what's interesting is sometimes, I'm a big fan of learning from other people's lessons. Like when they touch the stove, I can say, hey, I don't have to touch the stove. I got what happens when you do it. Some of us, we have to be hit over the head with a 2x4 to be able to get the lesson. So for some of you, you're going to go, oh my God, I totally went through that. Some of you are going to say, wow, that's something for me to file for me just in case I bump into that same thing. So that's kind of why I wanted to talk about them. And I'm not going to spend 20 years on all of these. Just really quickly, I just thought I would share just some of the things that just popped into my head of some of those lessons. The first one is that from owning this, because I went from I guess I got to step back for a minute. My experience prior to owning this is I was 22 years with Home Depot, and I was in various leadership positions from, I started as a cashier and I worked my way all the way up to not only district level positions, but regional levels and divisional level positions. And I had 10 states at one point and, hundreds of stores and, responsible for billions of dollars of business, all this different stuff. So I went from this really big thing to this really tiny thing. And on purpose, it's what I wanted to do to be able to, when I semi-retired, if you will. And so it was interesting to take some of those lessons between the two. And one of the things that we learned with Home Depot is that as we put in new stores into the smaller communities, how we had to maintain the big box retail side of it and what Home Depot stood for. But at the same time, how do we make it a small town type of feel within that community? Because some of the stores we were starting to do were in smaller and smaller towns. So one of the first lessons that I got was it really had to do with that smaller town, not just from Home Depot, but when I got my actual basket, it really drove this point home. And that is that customer service in a small town is really, really important because of the word of mouth that happens. Things go like wildfire when you're in a smaller town, and that can be good for you and that can be bad for you. Because in a smaller town, they take a lot of pride when it comes to that town and talking about, the different businesses that are in there. And granted, in some cases, they throw businesses under the bus for little things. And those of you that run a business in a small town know exactly what I mean about how people will jump on a bandwagon and start throwing it. But at the end of the day, it really comes down to the level of service and quality of products, and the things that you do in that small town can be huge. And you really need that word of mouth, that positive vibe running through the community. And when you're trying to turn something around, you really need it as well. When I took over my basket, it had a bad reputation. It was ran by somebody who was never there. He lived out of town. He let the kids do whatever they wanted to do, and they did, and it had a bad reputation. So I had to work on turning around that reputation in the community. And I had to do it through that word of mouth, that every single customer that came through those doors was going to turn around and tell their friends and tell the kids at school, and tell people and this and that. And it really was the word of mouth and people getting out there that it was a different Baskin-Robbins. And it took some time to be able to get that. But the more I could get that fire burning in the community, the more that people started coming in to see what was changing and what had changed and the good things that had going on. So lesson one was the importance of customer service. I think customer service is important no matter what type of business you have, whether it's a small town, big town, and everything else. But it really stood out that in order for me to turn this business around, it wasn't so much that I cleaned it up and I got better employees and we did a much better job. I needed that customer service word to spread through the town in order to be able to do it. So for those of you that have taken over a business or you're trying to grow your business, just know that customer service in that town and that word of mouth is definitely huge, because you really need to get that out there. The second lesson, and by the way, these are in no particular order, it was just how they came to me, is that people are key. And I really believe this. Those of you that have been listening to a while know that I'm really big on the employees that you hire, the people that you hire to represent your business, whether they're independent contractors or they're on your payroll. I think that your people are the people that represent your business. They're the ones that are in front of that customer on a regular basis, and they're the ones that represent you. So it didn't matter, for example, in my basket, how hard I was working and the reputation I was turning around. If I wasn't there and those kids were there, or I was in the back and the kids were up front, they were representing the business, and everything that I was trying to do really had to go through them, and it had to, they had to live up to the standards that I had, whether it was on customer service, maintenance, keeping how what the ice cream looked like when they gave it across the counter, the attitude that they had. The employees are huge on that. And I also learned another lesson that had to do with the fact that, as a business owner, we tend to work way too many hours. And there were periods of time where I was working 24/7, if you will, in the business, where I was there all 7 days a week. And I was having to be there from open to close because I didn't have the employees. And it wasn't necessarily that it was bad hires. It was just there were times of the year where I couldn't hire anybody for payroll reasons and for profitability reasons, that I had to be there all the time. So being able to have a staff that you can count on, especially in that last year, because in that last year I was having to, I started up the real estate business in that last year, and I needed to be able to count on those kids to be there when I couldn't be, because I had to go out and do stuff. They were young adults, weren't necessarily kids, but you know what I mean. But you really have to have a great team that you can rely on, that's going to be there for you. And, when I go back to my Home Depot days, one of the things that I always credit my success to was, yes, I can say that, I felt I was a really great leader, but it all came down to as I got really good at having great people and, and growing and developing them. And I think that also played a big part in my Baskin-Robbins as well, being able to do that. You got to have great people. The third lesson that I thought is, what will it take to produce the profit that you want? And this one has to do more with this. When I bought the store, I didn't buy it so that I could live off of it. I knew I was very realistic with the numbers and what it was going to produce and whatnot. It wasn't until later on through time that I started to realize that, hey, if I need this store to produce the profit that I need to be able to live on the income that I want to create, I can't just have this one little store. This one little store is going to take years and years and years to be able to grow it into the profitability that I want, and if ever. And in order for me to take this business to that next level, I was going to have multiple stores, and to be able to grow it, to be able to stack that profit from store to store on top of each other. And I think this is a lesson for all of us, is that I'm a firm believer that yes, you can take window cleaning or dog washing or dog sitting, petting, whatever. You can take any kind of job, no matter how minor. One of you guys have a dog pooping, scooping business. You can take any business and turn it into a 6-figure business, but you have to ask yourself, are you willing to do what it is that's going to take you to do that? Because you on your own is not going to be able to do it. More than likely, you're going to have people that help you grow and scale that business. Not saying that it can't be done, but you need to be realistic about what it's going to take to be able to produce the profits, the type of profits that you're wanting to do. And before you get too deep and so crazy with going with that business, is ask yourself, what's it going to take? And even though it's not going to be for several years, do I have what it takes? Do I want to have employees? There's people that want to have 6 figures, but they don't want to have any employees, and they have a business that is going to be very difficult for them to do that and create that. I'm not saying it can't be done. You may have to be creative or create some weird kind of ways to do it, or types of products or services that you do, but make sure that you're very realistic with yourself, with what you're going to get out of that business. But at the same time, I want you to dream big and think big as to what you can accomplish. And that was one of the big lessons, is because, like I said in the beginning, it didn't matter to me. It was more of just a fun thing that I was going to do. It wasn't until the recession changed all that, and that I had to change which is what ultimately led to me having to close it, was because what I needed it to go and what I needed it to do, it wasn't going to be able to do in the timeline that I wanted it to do. So it was an interesting lesson to be able to learn. This one here is one that's, I think, is key, especially for those of you that are part of a franchise, are part of something else. And lesson 4 is, don't count on others to pay for your advertising. When I was with Home Depot, obviously all our advertising was paid by the company. We didn't, at the store level, we had some little stuff that we would do within the stores, but the main chunk of the advertising was the commercials on TV and the different things that Home Depot did. Matter of fact, I saw a commercial last night, and I normally don't watch commercials because I have TiVo and I just zip through them. But last night I was watching one of the new commercials, and it did, it's been 10 years, and it brought back that nostalgia and those commercials and what they used to feel like and everything else. And when I think of advertising, with Baskin, we paid into advertising. There was a certain percentage that went to that. But, those advertisings and that stuff that Baskin would do did not come to my little town. I had to do advertising above and beyond that. I couldn't get out of that advertising. So I had to commit to a certain amount of advertising to spend in my local community. And I think for a lot of you guys, when you are counting on someone else's advertising to grow your business, you can't do that. You have to know that your company your franchise is going to go ahead and do some advertising, but you have to plan on doing stuff above and beyond that. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to spend money. You have to figure out free ways to be able to get advertising, how to leverage Facebook and if groups inside Facebook, and how to get some advertising, how to network in your community, you just have to be creative on how you're going to get that word of mouth out about your business and how you're going to advertise it. But at the end of the day, make sure that you're not relying on somebody else for any dollars that you have to put in. That's a cost of business. And if you have a franchise, don't even get me going about being mad about that. I used to listen to Baskin Robbins people moan and groan all day long about what the company was and wasn't doing. And at the end of the day, everybody signed up for that. It was never going to supplement all of the advertising that you needed to do within your business. You had to do it yourself. And I was glad I got to learn that lesson, because I think it's an important one for all of us to know, is that we can never count on somebody else to do the advertising for our business. We need to take that bull by the horn and do it ourselves. And sometimes that does cost a little bit more money. But at the end of the day, you also can do a lot of different ways to do it for free or very low cost. Another thing that I learned, a lesson that I got, was how to fight for stuff. I've always been a fighter. When I was with Depot, I was known to be able to push back and to fight for what I needed in the store level and what was going on. But when I bought the Baskin, I was having to fight for things that were as uncomfortable, things that I wasn't used to having to fight with. When the market tanked and I had a very high lease, I had to learn how to negotiate and change my lease and how I could work with them. I needed to learn all kinds of different ways to buy things better. I had to learn to fight with Baskin on things for a pricing standpoint, because there were certain things that I couldn't change because they were the standard with the company. And I'm like, it didn't make sense for my little store. Now that one was a little bit easier because I had been doing that at that corporate level within Home Depot, fighting for different things. But dealing with some of these other entities that somebody else within that company dealt with for me, and all of a sudden I was thrust in front of to be able to do it, that was an interesting experience and lesson for me. But one of the biggest lessons that I was able to take from my Baskin day or my Home Depot days and bring it into my Baskin days that helped when I was going for that lease or having to renegotiate anything was using numbers. And as you know, I'm huge on numbers. Numbers are our key. And I think what helped me be successful wasn't necessarily my negotiation skills, but as much as I was able to present my case through numbers. I wasn't just begging for people to lower my rent. I used hardcore numbers to say, this is why it doesn't make sense. This is why my business will not succeed at the current pace based off of the numbers that I have. So numbers are huge. You're going to hear me continue to talk about that, but when I had to learn how to fight for stuff, it was numbers that helped me do that. So that was kind of a fun thing. One of the big lessons that I learned was when to cut my losses. Eventually I didn't think, I thought I was going to have the store for a really long time. And at one point I had to learn to cut my losses. And whether it's admitting failure or not admitting failure, it was just more of, I had gotten everything that I was supposed to learn out of this business. And I learned that, I couldn't keep throwing money into this business. It wasn't going to be able to create the profit and the lifestyle that I needed to be able to do it. So I had to learn when to let go. And that was a lesson that took many years for me to do, because I probably should have learned that lesson at least a year, if not two, earlier than what I did. I kept it going for the wrong reasons. And I probably should have made that leap and that transition much earlier than I did. But in my mind, I was associating it with failure, and it had nothing to do with failure. It was just the wrong business at the wrong time under the wrong circumstances. Because one of the things, like, I could fight for my lease all I wanted, but at the end of the day, I was having a crazy lease, a crazy electric bill with all of those things, crazy product costs going through the roof because there were so many things working against me that I got in my head failure over cutting the losses and saying, look, you're fighting I was fighting the wrong windmill, if you will. I was fighting the wrong thing instead of stepping back and realizing what the right decisions was. So that was a huge, probably at the end of the day, that was probably the biggest lesson I got out of my time there. I'm sticking it here in the middle, but me personally, the biggest takeaway that I had came from that closing down that business and what I learned and then looking backwards. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Another lesson that I learned while I was there is that you're not alone. I would talk to, everything that I was going through. I think I was inherently knowing that I wasn't alone in it. But I would talk to business owner after business owner and other business owners in the community, and how much, as a small business owner, you always felt alone. With Depot, I always had other store managers I could talk to, or other district managers, or other assistant managers, whatever, the other department heads, whatever position I was in. I always knew there were other people out there. But when I had the Baskin, I realized how much on an island so many small business owners felt they were on, and that they were the only one going through stuff. And the reality is you're not, because when the market was tanking and through the recession, guess what? We all were on that same page. We were all feeling those same pains. We were all at different levels with acceptance of it, but you're never alone. There's always somebody out there that can help you through that struggle. And I learned also, one of those lessons is to reach out and to share and to let people know that they're not alone. And I found myself, especially in the later years, reaching out to my fellow business owners, letting them know that they weren't alone, and letting them vent to me and share what they were going through, the highs, the lows, and everything in between, because I didn't want them to think that they were alone, that we shared the similar struggle, and that, and I think that's what led me ultimately to doing this podcast, is to let you guys know that you're not alone. It may feel isolated and you may feel alone, but you're really not alone, because everything I talk about, there's someone else listening. I can guarantee you, if not multiple people listening, that are going through the exact same thing that you are. So that was an interesting lesson to learn there. And it really led into why I started to do this podcast, is to help people. One of the reasons that I did the podcast is to let people know that they are not alone. Let's see here. Number 8. One of the things, this was a really fun one that for me anyways, was that everything that was working in big box retailing, a lot of it translated into small box. And this also was another big reason for the podcast, is because I immediately felt that the knowledge and everything that I gained from a business standpoint translated into being able to run my store. And a lot of those lessons I was able to bring with me from that. And the first time that I really felt that 100% was, I remember early on, it was within the first few weeks of me having my basket, and I went to a meeting with my fellow franchisees. And I'm sitting in this room listening to these other franchisees talk about different things. And I remember the lessons that I had been doing for the last 22 years coming out to try to help teach these people, going, look, you know what, this is basic stuff when it comes to profitability. This is basic stuff when it comes to calculating out with what brings customers in, what doesn't bring customers in. This is how you, there are so many different things that came through as to right away as to how many of these lessons were able to translate from big box to little box. You know what, whether it was the numbers, whether it was how to read the P&L and how to impact the P&L, how important doing inventory was. You heard me talk about that last week. And, you know, I took all those skills from inventory and how important it was with basket, with Home Depot, and I moved it into my basket, and it helped me get those turns and to be able to keep money flowing through the company when sales were tight. I immediately brought through the customer service aspect of it. And it was the very first thing that got changed in the store, was attacking customer service. I looked at my store through my customers' eyes, which is exactly what I did at Home Depot with them walking into my store. And I would take my employees outside and walk them through the business. I should talk about that again. I did it once before in the past, but I really love that topic. And you know what? The branding, sorry, somebody keeps calling me and I forgot to put my phone on mute. You know, the branding of everything and how important it was with the message that you were creating for your business and what it was going to mean in the community and how important that was. You know, there were so many little things that just really translated really well from one business to the other. And I thought that was really cool. And the 9th lesson that I wanted to just talk about was the unique challenges, because as much as Home Depot prepared me for the little box, so like the big box stuff that translated into the little box, it didn't prepare me for the little box challenges that I was going to face that I wasn't prepared for. It wasn't that I wasn't prepared for them. I think I knew them inherently deep down, but there were little challenges that were unique to being in a small, having a business in a small town and having a business that you didn't have this big business for. So some of the examples of that is, you know what, if my store struggled at Home Depot, it still was under the big box umbrella and they could be bailed out and saved by that. If you know, we had some stores, not necessarily mine, but there were some stores that struggled. Well, guess what? There were corporate people that would come in and help you out. There were district people that would come in and help you out. Well, guess what? When you have a small business, there's nobody to jump in and help you save your business. For most of you guys, you're on your own. There's nobody, there's no franchise, there's nobody there to help you. And one of the challenges that you have as a small business is the fact that, you know, you're on your own and you're having to, there's no one to come on their white horse and save you, that you have to try to figure it out on your own. And you live and die off of what you make. You know, at our stores, you know, there was this corporate that would help if we ran into any kind of problems. But you know what, when you're a small business owner, you don't have anybody paying your bills. You're the one that has to pay your bills. There's nobody there to save you and nobody to bail you out. There's no one to catch you, if you will. You know, another thing that really stood out, not necessarily on my part, but as I talked and interacted with more and more small business owners, is how much self-taught you have to be. I'm self-taught in a lot of different ways, but I also was very blessed with a lot of different training courses I was going through, a lot of mentors that I worked for, people that taught me all kinds of things about business. Well, for most of you guys, you don't have those mentors, you don't have those people, you don't have those training classes and things like that. And I think that as a small business owner, that is definitely a lesson to walk away with, that you really have to be aggressive on your own and to learn those things. And, you know, and I can't begin to tell you how much I wish I could take every small business owner out there and say, please, whatever you do, never get so arrogant that you think you know it all. That yes, you've learned tons, you've grown so much with what it is that you have self-taught yourself, but there is so much more you don't know. There's so much more you can learn. And a great example of this happened the other day. I was sharing one of the videos that I had made on margin and markup with one of the business owners that I talk to on a regular basis. And they were like, yeah, okay, that's kind of cool. And then they kept going. And I'm like, wait a minute, wait. I don't care that you don't like the video. That's not what bothers me. But the fact that he was so willing to pass off that he needed to know this information was my bigger problem. It was as if he didn't need to know that to run his business. And here's somebody who's been in business for a very long time. And the reality is we should have been able to have a really good dialogue around margin and how he's pricing and gross margin and markups and all that stuff. We should have been able to have a really good dialogue. And what I found was here was somebody that I don't need this stuff. I don't need it. I don't want it. It was just the way it came across to me. That could have been timing. It could have been a lot of different reasons, but I've run into that several different times with people where they don't think they need to learn more. And the reality is they don't have anybody that's thumping them in the head, telling them, no, you do need to know this. As arrogant as sometimes we got in Home Depot, there was always somebody to thump us in the head and say, you don't know anything. There's a lot more that you have to learn, that you have to constantly grow and learn and be a sponge and take in things. And I put this lesson for last for a reason, because I really need each and every one of you guys to realize that you have to continue to learn. You have to continue to grow. You have to continue to be a sponge. You have to continue to seek out mentors. You have to continue to try to become a better and better business owner. You have to become better at your numbers. You have to become a better leader. You have to become better at understanding business so that you can grow your business. And, it was a huge lesson I learned during those 5 years that there are so many people out there that are not doing that. I would sit in a room with these Baskin-Robbins owners, and some of them had been there for 10, 15, 20 years. And some of them loved to learn and grow. And some of them just thought, yep, I don't need to learn anything. And I can guarantee you that the people that they had their stores for a very long time never grew. They were the same store they were 5 years ago and the same store they were 10 years ago. And all they would do was complain about the change that was going on around them, but they never bothered to figure out how to be a better business person, how to grow their business, how to make a better business. And that was sad to me, and that was frustrating to me, and it was sad to me because they made a decent, okay living off of what it is, but they never had any goals or anything they wanted to take their business to. And to me, that made me sad because I'm always about that constantly growing and getting better and everything else. And, when I take a lot of these lessons, it's funny when I'm sitting here doing this episode, I'm realizing how much of these lessons played into why I started the podcast and why I want to make it my mission for the rest of my life to help as many small business owners as I can, because there's so many different things that I saw and experienced during those 5 years. So when people ask me, would I go back and would I change anything? Would I do it again? These are what make me say yes. While yes, there was a lot of negative that went on, the positives that come out of it and the mission that I've come out of it with is so great, and wanting to help all of you. And those lessons that I just went over, and I'm sure there's more if I really put my head to it, but all of those lessons are lessons that all of us can learn from. And all of these lessons that are on here, they each touch each of you a different way. And there might be one in there might be 5 in there that means something to one of you. And that's what those lessons are for. Those are those lessons that help me realize how to talk better to you guys. And these aren't the only lessons that I'm piling on. I've got all the lessons that I learned from Home Depot. I've got all the lessons I learned from the basket, the ice cream shop, the brick and mortar piece of it, the franchise piece of it. I have all the lessons from being in service space and my last 5 years or 6 years in being in real estate, and my last years of coaching and helping other service-based people that work through real estate people. It just continues to pile on. And every year there's more knowledge that gets piled on and more lessons that get piled on. And the more that I learn from you guys, when you reach out to me, when I'm coaching you, when you're talking to me, I'm learning things about some of your businesses that it's amazing. And some of them cross over to other things. Sometimes I'm learning something new that I'm able to say, hey, I can file this because it works for these types of businesses. There's all kinds of stuff. Life is all about lessons. Life is all about learning and growing, not only personally, but also in business. And, I think that's what made me want to talk about this, is because I think that we need to continue to grow. And I know this has been a theme through the podcast, and I'll probably touch on it every 6 months or so, because I think it's very, very important that we always know that we need to constantly be growing and gaining and learning and stuff like that. So I don't know. I'm just rattling now. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. And I just wanted to share this stuff with you. And I'm excited to be with you. I did just finish up one of the videos for the next video for Knowing Your Numbers series. It's on your break-even point. I'm going to talk about it in the next episode, because I'm going to start dedicating Thursdays for a while to be about learning your numbers and everything else. So you can check that out. I'll put it in the it's already on the YouTube channel already, which is in the show notes, but we'll break it down and we'll talk about it a little bit more next week. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here, because I'm rattling and my throat hurts and I'm done talking. So stop listening. All right. I'll talk to you guys next episode. Bye for now. Hey, badass, before you go, if your goal is to get your business up to a 6-figure take-home pay, I've got a tool that's going to help you out. If you head on over to localsmallbusinesscoach.com/8 steps or hit the link in the show notes, I've got a free ebook for you. And what I do is I walk you through the 8 steps that you need to take in order to be able to grow your business into a 6-figure income. Listen, you all have goals for your family, for your finances, and you need a roadmap on how to get there. So once again, there is a free ebook called The 8 Steps to $100,000 in Take-Home Pay. It's for yours. It's free. Just head on over to localsmallbusinesscoach.com/8 steps or click the link in the show notes and get yours for free.